I'm good. Okay. Well, hello everybody. My name is Tom Eaton, and I wanted to talk about uh, doing uh, a virtual sort of a VR 2D animation that I created. Um, so yeah, it looks like we got a few people in here. That's great. Um, so just by way of introduction, um, I am a faculty member at Kingsborough Community College out in Sheepshead Bay, which is also part of CUNY. And my background is in television animation. Um, I uh, have worked on shows for Cartoon Network, like Sheep in the Big City, Codename Kids Next Door, show called Maya and Miguel for PBS, Little Einsteins on Disney Channel. And alongside that, I have liked to do my own animations. I make my own animated films, and sort of taking what I've learned from television series production and putting it into practice in my own work. Um, sort of like realizing what the different departments do, and then wearing those hats to make my own projects. So I didn't necessarily go to school for animation, but um, I was always interested in drawing comics and making animation, and um, got into it. Yeah, I started interning at a studio and got into it that way. Um, so yeah, my so I've also I've made independent films. This is my website, goodeaton.com, and I have a portfolio section. So I've done original projects like short animated films, um, a few animated music videos, one for Sufjan Stevens' Christmas first Christmas box set, um, and one for Details magazine, a funny Craigslist ad set to music. Other freelance projects. Most recently, I did 3 spots for Sesame Workshop International. Um, and yeah, one of my ongoing projects is this set of books. Uh, these characters call for this character called the Bug Zapper, and I started this as a web comic. I was teaching kids comics, and yeah, I started a series, uh, a web comic series, sort of based on an example superhero that I made for the kids to come up with their own superhero characters and combinations. He actually has his own website, and then I kind of expanded this into a book, and that I do as like a self-released kind of print-on-demand book. Then I made a sequel to it, and now I'm working on a third one. I've got these books as also as Apple eBooks, and I make little bonus animated scenes that kind of tie in with the comics. Um, and it's been a neat outlet, creative outlet, and I know part of these workshops that you guys have for part of the game jam. I know this is not directly video game related. I'm guessing a lot of you are interested in animation, and I know part of this is all about inspiration and artistic inspiration. So for me, I've been working on this project, this character, for almost 10 years, and um, yeah, I've done 2 books, which are each around 100 pages, and each chapter has a little animated cutscene that you can watch on the website. And it's been a good way for me to kind of keep my sort of story muscles moving, and kind of keep your creative juices flowing. I think the ideas that you come up with, and I know a lot of my students are hesitant to make short films because they want to have the perfect idea, and can't always get started until they do. Sometimes, yeah, sort of just picking something and running with it. Web comics are great for that. It's a pretty low stakes way of testing out things, and yeah, I've just liked it as a way to try new ideas and regularly make animation. um, Excuse me. Um, so one of the projects I've done a couple times, I've made holiday. See, there's a Christmas section. Um, Something animators like to do is sometimes make holiday animated cards or short animated videos that they can send out to people and that can get shared online. So I made a few for this character. Another one that I wanted to do, I thought it would be neat to try to make one of these holiday sort of videos. But I always think it's nice to, when you do these projects, to try a new technique. And uh, so I haven't done gaming myself, but I wanted to kind of step into a different direction, sort of like that, or at least VR. And I know that that in VR, or at least on YouTube and social media, that sometimes you see these 360 videos, and that sort of got me thinking. I might not be ready to program something and get it interactive and animated, but VR might be a nice halfway step where I can, make a linear video that plays back from start to finish in the linear way that I'm used to, but um, has some new component that I've never dealt with before, which is this 360 quality. So I can play this video back. I don't know. Hopefully the audio is audible. Um, yeah, I'll play this video and you can kind of see how it works, and then I'd like to get into kind of a behind the scenes of how I created it and some of the things I had to think about getting into it. And yeah, yeah. So I'll play this back, and again, because it's a 360 video, you can really look at it from any way. I'm going to kind of play it back from the try to do the way that it's supposed to be viewed. So we have the bug zapper at the top of a hill. If we look down, you see his enemies hiding behind trees. He gets going. Bumblebeezy spits out his cocoa. Butterfly Bob is above him with an ice pick or a icicle. Gets knocked out by a chairlift. These guys get their poles stuck together. And then he slides down to the lodge where his friends Robert and Amber are waiting for it to snow. Um, and a little promo for the book and the website down here at the bottom. So I did this in 2007. Yeah. So that's the video, and like I said, it could be watched in any direction. Like you've probably seen 360 videos before on, they're on YouTube or anywhere, but um, yeah, the whole idea is that you can you could just watch it from the point of view of the skier and kind of just go down the mountain slowly. You could look up and watch Butterfly Bob get hit by the chairlift. Then there's the jump that kind of appears, and you can go over that. Villains get poofed and result in all the snow. There you go. So yeah, you can look at it from any direction. So that I knew that was what I wanted to create, but I just want to see. Yeah, I know everybody's muted. We can take questions as they come up in a minute. Um, I knew this is what I wanted to create, but I had no idea how to sort of achieve this. and you have to sort of think about what the problems are. I'm very used to making these other sorts of videos that are just more straightforward animated shorts. You're looking at the scene that I've carefully storyboarded in a 16 by 9 ratio. Uh, how do I how do you even tell a story when your audience can be looking in any direction? And maybe some of you have come across this in your game design as well, and have a ready answer. But to me, it's a brand new challenge, which is a great thing. Um, so my approach is always to make a storyboard when I make an animation. And so I thought, how can I make a storyboard of this? And I know the other challenges um, that I had were um, uh, just the idea of the audience being able to look anywhere, and saying, like, how am I going to make artwork that holds up to the audience being able to look in any direction, um, which I didn't really know. Yeah, and how do you go about storyboarding uh, a video where someone can look in any direction? So those were some of the challenges, not to mention just the logistics of how you make this happen. And the other part of it was I really wanted to do this as a 2D animation, because I haven't really seen many, or if any, 360 videos that were two-dimensional animation. I think there's a lot of 3D animations that are output as um, 360 videos, but for like flat hand-drawn characters, not something you see a lot. And I went online and I found, Simon's Cat had one, but that was also just a static. It's like a static living room scene, stationary living room scene, and they didn't really play with camera moves or anything like that. It's the character just pops up in different locations. So I think I wanted to tell more of a story and have 2D animation and camera movement as well as part of this. So yeah, does anybody have any questions so far? I don't want to totally monologue. You're welcome to unmute if you like, or I'm kind of new to Discord. Okay. Well, uh, so what um, yeah, like I said, I wanted to make a storyboard and animatic first, and wasn't completely sure how you go about this in a 3D setting. And there are a lot of I don't know if people have seen um, many of these 360 videos. One of the most famous projects is the Spotlight stories that Google has, and I know there was a director, the director of this one, Pearl, um, said that you just can't storyboard 360 videos. Um, but usually there's a place where you want your audience to look, right? Um, so I wanted to think about. I think the challenge then is, how do you get the audience to look in the correct direction? So uh, what I did was I ended up building a scene, like a rudimentary scene in Cinema 4D. I used a very old version that I had a copy of, which you know I knew it didn't have to be a perfect render. This was really just for reference. And what I did was I sort of roughed out the scene. I roughed out all the elements that I wanted. Um, I knew I wanted, some trees in the foreground, so I just created these sort of cone-like trees. I made this sort of multi-plane uh, background here. I created a chair lift in 3D that you can see here. Very sort of primitive chairs. These instances going along a pole. And then I put my character in as um, as a flat plane that I applied a texture of. So I made kind of a storyboard. Um, I made a storyboard of all the different characters' actions. So um, in Toon Boom Storyboard Pro, I created a storyboard of this everything I wanted the Bug Zapper, the superhero character, to do. Um, and then I applied this as a texture to a plane in the 3D environment. Um, that just kind of goes on. And I had also different artwork for the um, Bumblebeezy here. The villains is spitting out his drink and then goes off in hot pursuit. Um, the kids waiting at the bottom, Lodge, Mosquito going after him, the Mosquito character. Uh, so I created all of these super sketchy, but then applied them as textures to these planes and added a camera and said, this is going to be my animatic. It's sort of like an animatic in 3D space. Uh, and I keyframed them all going down the slide, going down the hill. Scoot ahead a little bit. So yeah, you can kind of see um, there should be a card. I don't see his card, his plane right now. I'm not sure why that is. But yeah, there should have been a plane attached to that camera, and the camera is following the plane, and it kind of goes down the hill, does all the things I want it to. Then the planes that represent the villains kind of come out and pursue him. And uh, so yeah, this was all. It's playing back very very slowly right now. I initially thought I would have a snowblower at the top, and I kind of ditched this uh, like a snowmaker, snow machine. Kind of ditched this because it was going to be a lot to. All these elements would be difficult to add in 2D once I needed to do that. So let's see here. Yeah, so I have my camera, and if I look through the camera, you can kind of see, yeah, what the camera would be seeing, and um, get a chance to see what that would be like. Yeah, so these planes, you're not seeing the materials on them right now, but that would be the two villains chasing in hot pursuit. It's playing back somewhat slowly at the moment, but um, I was able to export a render, and the render that I exported was so I attached this sphere. I made this sphere a child of the camera that was going down the hill, and the camera in turn was parented to the bug zapper's plane that was coming down the hill. And what the sphere does is I looked at a tutorial online that recommended this approach to creating a 360 video. It was to create a sphere, give it a completely reflective texture, which I did. So basically a mirror texture, and then apply a bake tag. And the bake tag allows you to render your the entire reflection as an image sequence, which, in other words, is a movie. So image sequences, um, as probably many of you know, are a type of footage. Um, so I knew, the one thing I didn't understand was how to create this sort of. I knew that I needed to make spherical video to make a 360 video. That all 360 videos are basically, it's basically just like you have a sphere and you're sort of projecting your artwork on the inside of the sphere instead of a regular screen, and the audience can look in any direction of the sphere. Um, so the sphere that I have here was basically recording everything that was in this world, and giving me a rectangular two-dimensional output. And what that looked like um, was this. So this is my animatic export, um, and you'll see that it from Cinema 4D, and you'll see that it has kind of it's got a wild sort of fisheye look to it. Um, I did animate the butterfly character because, well, I'll talk about that in a moment. Um, Goes over the jump, comes down here at the bottom. A few of these textures, like the ones at the bottom, don't have, they seem to be missing. And then we get all the snow. The snow was particles that I created in Cinema 4D, and then the video ends right about here. So um, that gave me an idea of how to sort of crack this puzzle. I know that now, I think since I've done this video, I did this video. I didn't think it was that long ago, but it was actually four years ago. I did it in December 2016, and um, at the time there wasn't a way to export 360 video from Cinema 4D. Now I think it's just a feature. Like you can just check a box, I believe, on your camera and do this. Um, but I didn't know how to do that, so I did this trick about baking the reflection over the course of a film and ending up with this film sequence. And then I knew, as a 2D animator, I knew, like, this is just a matter of recreating all these things as two-dimensional objects. There's something kind of neat. I like the effect that I get with the Cinema 4D animatic. Some things about it, the trees certainly, I think, behave in a much more consistent way, since they're really moving relative to the camera. I like the fog that we're getting with the environment object, and there's some nice things. I applied this sort of watercolor texture to the ground, which I think does a really nice job of giving the illusion of speed. Um, but ultimately, I did still want to get it as a two-dimensional animation. And yeah, like I said, as long as I knew that if I just got everything um, two-dimensional, that I would be good to go. And I know how to do 2D. I know how to make traditional animation. Um, so yeah. um, so I decided to kind of break this up. Yeah. So part of it was, and the other thing I want to show you about the animatic is I was also able to test that it worked um, in 360 view. Let's see. So what I did was I uploaded my 360 animation to YouTube, and um, the animatic, and there's a little bit of code. If you have a spherical video, YouTube requires you to add some special type of code that I have no memory of right now, but if you wanted to do that, you could look it up. Um, and that's what turns your spherical video and kind of wraps it around a sphere. And this let me, just see if the thing worked, um, to kind of see whether, as I rolled around, like the scene looked the way I wanted it to, and yeah, the different parts were happening at the right timing. Like I said, a big part of this video is making sure that the audience looks at the places that you want them to, and uh, how do you get them to do that? Uh, um, I'm sure people run into this challenge when you're designing video games as well. Uh, um, you kind of use. My wife has an acting background, and they have techniques on stage. If you're acting for theater, your audience can look in any direction. They can stare at their program in the dark if they want to, or um, they can look anywhere in the theater. But theater has a way of even though everything is you know sort of in long shot, there are different techniques that the actors do. Like some of the actors will stay more still, so that the quote unquote camera is on the person who is active. All of our attention is drawn to the person who is active. So I try to do cues like that. Having all the actors look somewhere, which makes you look. I have the bug zapper look up um, when the butterfly first comes into the scene, and then when he gets hit, he looks up again in satisfaction. So sort of pantomiming some of those things helps us to look in a certain way. And the other thing about 360 video, this sort of staging that we have to deal with is um, ultimately, even though your audience can look anywhere, yeah, there's one place where the story is really happening. Um, and I think even a video like Spotlight Stories, which is done by Disney animator Patrick Osborne directing, he keeps most of the action in this. It's all from the interior of a car. It's it's all in the driver's seat and the seat right behind where the daughter is. So the father and the daughter. Uh, um, they don't really put any valuable information, from what I can tell, out the passenger side. In other Spotlight stories, they actually, I mean, they call it Spotlight, I think, because the first one is like a flashlight looking at bugs. And that's almost seems like a cheat in terms of getting the audience to look at the thing you want them to look at, because yeah, you're being very explicit about telling the audience where in this open environment to look. Um, so that was one challenge that, yeah, I wanted to address in the animatic, and I think it worked out pretty well. Um, that you're always looking. Ideally, you're looking at the bug zapper as it goes down the hill. If you really want to, you can do what I did and do it from his point of view, and kind of watch uh, as if you were skiing. And so yeah, once I had this as a flat two-dimensional video like this, I decided I will handle the environment, like the landscape itself, in After Effects, and I decided to make the hill itself is basically a white solid that I've given a mask to, and I will kind of rotoscope. I imported the animatic footage um, and just sort of rotoscoped the curve that that basically does this sort of fisheye animation. Just sort of trace it exactly as it animates, and that's how I got that to work. And yeah, it does. Um, since it follows that, all the decisions about the spherical video are kind of made. The distortions, I don't have to kind of wing that. Um, so then the other elements I needed to think about. Uh, I needed to figure out how to handle the trees. Um, it was helpful to have this animatic because it let me know that things in the middle, for the most part, were not so distorted. Um, they, I was able to see from this animatic that if I put most of the action in this sort of middle area, that the characters weren't really warped. The biggest challenge is Butterfly Bob up at the top, getting hit by the chairlift, um, because you can see anytime he kind of crosses over the top of the sphere, he gets very distorted, which is understandable because yeah, that's where the fisheye effect sort of spreads everything out the most um, in our two-dimensional video. And the same with the chairlifts. There's a couple frames where they really get all distorted and sort of torn apart here. But it's not for long. It's actually not for long. So it's really just a couple frames. Um, so I decided that, yeah, I would just sort of do regular character animation for most of these characters, have them as two-dimensional characters, and sort of keep them in the middle area of the screen. I did still want to have Butterfly Bob up there because I think a big part of 360 storytelling is, making your audience look around and look up and look down, um, and letting that be part of the canvas. So I thought what I would do is maybe not have him kind of cross the top of the sphere, but just have him up, but not above. He won't go any higher than the top of the two-dimensional screen here, just to save myself a little sanity. So that was one choice, and then I thought, well, what I can do is, I've got him animated, and I can use this as a reference. Since my animatic is telling me just how distorted he is, I brought him into um, After Effects and made a comp with just him and use sort of envelope distortion to sort of distort him at those frames when he's that high to match, for whatever reason, I'm not seeing him or Mosquito here. Um, this is not as final a composition as I. Oh, there he is. Very back now. Still should have the Mosquito. Um, uh, yeah. So uh, that keeping Butterfly Bob up in this part and trying to match the distortion that I saw in my spherical reference. It mostly worked. I think it didn't quite work. Um, it didn't totally work as well as I thought. Like you can kind of tell that he gets distorted if you look up at him. Certainly, I notice it since I was sort of messing with him to get this effect. So that was the biggest challenge, trying to do this in that way. Again, I was really just sort of making this up, making up these solutions as I went, trying to take a two-dimensional approach to this, to creating this spherical video, which has so many dimensional elements to it. Um, yeah, I don't know if I don't know if anybody has questions who's here, or you're welcome to jump in if you do. I don't always know what people understand and what they don't. Yeah, Ben, did you? Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, mhm, right. If I were to try to make a 2D look, um, yeah, I mean I've thought many times about this because making the element two-dimensional is a real pain, honestly. It's and I thought many times, like, is there a way that I can make this environment 3D and come out 2D? And I'm sure that there is. I actually did a lot of tests with the trees and tried to make them two-dimensional in Cinema 4D and had them just sort of rotate towards the camera so that they always seemed kind of flat, but it just came out looking wonky. Um, I would think I'm not very well versed in Unity at all, but I, I've learned more about Cinema 4D since doing this, and I sometimes think if I had created the background, as a pure white material, and if I'm trying to get the same thing that I got in After Effects, like a pure white material with a luminance uh, with the luminance channel activated. So that seems to be how people get a sort of like a 3D characters with flat colors. Um, I know there's also toon shaders and things you could do. Um, I liked the I liked this watercolor texture that I had on it a lot in the animatic, and I think when I got to the 2D, I did sort of a in Toon Boom, I sort of hand animated some texture, but and I think it works, but it's not quite the same. Um, there's something I like a lot about this texture that's just there, and that the characters are just going over. Does that answer your question? Or um, okay, yeah, okay, great. um, yeah, did anybody else have any questions? Uh, so yeah, I think um, it's there were a lot of things like I like the movement of the trees. I liked a lot in the animatic as well, um, and even some of the fog and fall off. Although I think if you're going for a two-dimensional aesthetic, as much as I liked the fogginess, um, it wasn't part of my original vision, and I want to stick to sort of crisp 2D uh, 2D elements, like it's you um, but yeah, if there was a way in 3D that I could have kept, or in the 3D that I could have gotten the trees to look 3D, and there probably was. This is a technology I'd like to reapproach and do more with, and really get the 3D to work for you in these environments. Um, what I did for the trees instead was I just created them. It was either in Illustrator or Toon Boom. I can't remember which. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Toon Boom Harmony, um, but yeah, you could use it to make sprites, or I think it's a excellent 2D animation software, and it's really gained a lot of traction in the television animation industry lately. Um, but yeah, so I did these trees as separate objects, and I really wanted to have multiple rows so that I had depth perception. But just getting them to behave properly, even when I was matching them to my reference art, was incredibly difficult. I have if you guys are used to After Effects and know all about comps and pre-comps, this project became kind of like a rat's nest of pre-comps nested within pre-comps nested within pre-comps, and I started calling things like super comp, and uh, the pre-comp that has all the other pre-comps in it, and it got to be a real beast, and um, that can be kind of deadly for your memory when you're working in After Effects, and you can cause a lot of problems for yourself. Um, but yeah, trying to come up with a simple way to get these to travel correctly that didn't look, that just sort of recreated what I was seeing here. Because again, my whole mantra during this whole thing was like, this is just this looks 3D, but it's really just two-dimensional information. I can do this in 2D, and trying to get that to work, and the trees were really a pain. Maybe the most difficult thing in the whole project, the thing that you pay zero attention to. The things that I think worked really well are I loved how the chairlift came out, and I did the chairlift in Toon Boom. Go down to my animation. Um, so I use Toon Boom has since become Toon Boom Harmony. So last night I sort of tried to recreate by importing an SWF file into Toon Boom, so I could show you a little bit of how it looks in Toon Boom. So this is my Toon Boom recreation. I didn't redraw it, obviously, but let's see here. Here we go. So that's the animation um, that I got, and I got this by just importing the video that I just showed you, the animatic video that looked like a rectangle, into Toon Boom Harmony, which is this program, and then using multiple layers and tracing over it, I put them on objects called pegs to kind of get them to move slowly um, to match the subtle movement that's going on in the Cinema 4D file, and and yeah, and then there's a few fisheye distortion frames, which were actually the most fun to trace. So these were basically rotoscoped, which is just tracing animation, tracing a subject, and then I got to put in the butterfly sort of struggling and falling off and sort of kicking his legs. Um, I thought I was going to do all the chair positions individually, and that was just crazy. I ended up doing a lot of shape tweening and getting Toon Boom to kind of tween the positions for me in this very early part, and I was happy with how that came out, and I was amazed that stuff like this, when you look at it in the 360 video, when it's all wrapped around again, it actually shows up as this rectangular chair. That it does get put back together correctly in the software, which I think is really neat. I did the same thing for there's a jump that the the bug zapper goes over later. For whatever reason, I used the same approach, and the jump in the 360 video, it seems a little more distorted, and I still don't know exactly why that would be. But this approach worked really well here, and that was kind of fun to do. Um, the middle part was fun to do. The chair movement was not. Um, so yeah, it was a matter of animating all the characters, and all the characters were animated in Toon Boom. Toon Boom Animate, I think, was the version I had. Now it's Toon Boom Harmony. Um, and again, I don't know how many of you are animators, but this was I did different characters, different layers, and sort of exported Flash SWF files that I could then import into After Effects. And so each character sort of had its own little movie, and there's an alpha channel around them, and they just sort of play back in linear time. Um, and and I was able to composite it all together in After Effects. Um, uh, so there's all the bug zappers frames. Even though it looks like a lot of frames, it's not. It's kind of the bare minimum to tell us that he's skiing down the slopes. Uh, just to it's a lot of repetition and holds. In his case, I think for Bumblebeezy, the Bumblebee villain, he had a scarf that kind of cycled as he goes down, just to try to keep him a little more alive. Um, and the same with the other villain, Mosquito. Let's see here. Do After Effects. Yeah, so these were all pulled together um, in in After Effects, and I'm not sure how aware you are of one of the biggest problems in 360 videos, but the one of the biggest problems is the seam, the dreaded seam, um, and of course that's where everything that's on the right has to match perfectly everything that is on the left. Um, and if you don't get that to match perfectly, you end up with a line partway down your, as your audience is kind of rotating around the scene, they're going to see this big line going down the world, splitting it in half, and maybe things not lining up perfectly. And maybe you've seen videos like this. I think even with like um, live action 360 camera equipment, it's actually a problem even for that. And there's all kinds of software I think that is supposed to remedy the seam issue. I've definitely seen I remember when I was working on this, watching 360 videos on the New York Times website and being like, wow, they really just left the seam there, and maybe that's fine. Um, but if you want it to be really immersive, you have to really make sure that this edge lines up perfectly. So I'm sort of thinking this master comp is not my most master comp. This is kind of where you get into all kinds of craziness with you know final comp final comp version 1, final comp version 2. And when you come back 4 years later, it's a little tricky figuring out what's what. uh, so all that to say, this shot right here is a problem because you see half a tree right at this minute, and there should be the other corresponding half a tree over here. If they're traveling up the hill, we should see the exact percentage less every frame of the tree going up towards the right. It's a little bit of a brain puzzle, and the way that I figured it out, or tried to keep myself the most sane with it, is that I just took whatever movie was over here. I duplicated and reflected. I think I reflected it and put it over here. And yeah, you do really have to match up the lines and make sure that the seam works. I think I may have had. Well, this is what I would do now. I may have had like yet another composition where I just sort of put two instances of the master composition together so that I could see the seam next to itself. Um, I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but yeah. um, so that's theoretically the way that it all worked, and uh, yeah, it for the sky. I made a just sort of a washy painter texture in I think it was Corel Painter. Probably now I would use Clip Studio um, to get that brush effect, or Procreate, probably the best for getting a nice painterly sky. And I did not worry at all about how it would distort or anything like that. The snow that happens at the end, I took directly from Cinema 4D from my animatic, and I exported two image sequences. One which was the snow itself, so the little white specks. This is a particle system of disks coming out from the sky, and then I exported a matte pass, which basically erases everything else, so it makes it transparent. Gives you an alpha channel to work with. So that is how I created the snow, and that's really like the one 3D element that remained in the project. Um, but again, I think it's satisfying because you look up at the sky, and um, you get to see the snow coming from all directions. And I initially thought, oh, I'll just keyframe that, or hand animate that as well, and of course it's kind of ridiculous. Uh, I changed my mind very quickly about that. Um, so it's kind of neat that yeah, you can look up at it, and it does give you what I think is a nice 3D payoff to the piece in a still true to the two-dimensional aesthetic. one thing you might notice, I don't know if anybody saw it before, but in the very center, there's this little dot that that was in that was in my PNG render for the particles. Probably with a little more time, it could have been masked out, although I didn't want there to be a hole. So that's sort of an artifact, I believe, of the, I want to say, of the reflective texture that was on the sphere that I had to bake to get all of this stuff. Um, because this was recorded uh, from that metallic sphere in my animatic. Um, uh, yeah, I exported the particles in the particle matte pass. Um, so I think that this little dot at the top is a reflection. It's a weird little artifact that kind of stays there. Um, there's also a little pop in the hill that kind of drove me crazy and um, sort of remains in the animation. Uh, but it's not the end of the world. So all in all, yeah, I that's the way it was put together, and I think see if there's anything else in here that I wanted to show off to you. Yeah, again, just I had all of these individual SWF files. I guess they could have been movies. I was hoping to keep the file size down. And they have their animation, and it's all timed to the appropriate place in the video where their action is supposed to happen. He eventually does start. um, so yeah, just sort of getting all of these assets together, putting them together in After Effects, and doing some keyframing of the elements in After Effects. Um, that's basically the way it came together. And I think trying to stick to the two-dimensional aesthetic was the biggest challenge. I wanted it does have a simple look to it, you know. And I was sort of realizing as the piece goes on, you know, I want it to look I want it to look very simple and straightforward and easy to follow, and hopefully sort of hand drawn. Um, but sometimes getting that is actually harder to do than, you know, some I think some, not that it's easy to make 3D animation, but at least with when you're making 3D animation, all you have to do is build the world and you know, put your camera, you know, animate your camera traveling through it. You know, with Cinema 4D, I guess now you can just export that as a 360 video. I'm pretty sure you can do the same for Unity. You can export 360 videos from Unity um, if you have a 3D world. Yeah, it's really just figuring out how to get a two-dimensional world out of it. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, yeah, it had a ton of challenges, but I was happy with the result and getting it to look like flat and two-dimensional. Um, see here. So you end up with you do end up with a file that looks like this, which again is kind of just kind of I almost feel like the spherical videos are a piece of artwork in their own right. See Butterfly Bob distort a little bit. and for these end tags, I actually did use something in After Effects that lets you make sort of more straightforward 360 video. Um, it had some special camera setup built in. I can't remember where I got it from, but you'll see that even though these elements are in the middle, using that technique gave it probably the correct amount of bowing that I just sort of ignored by having my characters in here. And probably for the reason because I ignored that um, here, I just kind of let them be the way they are. There is probably more an exaggerated fisheye in this final result, like especially when the characters come in, like he looks huge, or yeah, the characters on the side look enormous, depending on how you've got this tilted. The same with the kids at the end; they kind of look they look really big um, until you rotate. And I think some of that may I'm not exactly sure. Some of that may be because I didn't really bow or distort these in any way. Um, yeah, so that's the piece. I took this video, injected it with the code, uploaded it to YouTube, and that's how you get to see the 360 result. If you didn't want to, rely on YouTube, you can also use GoPro as a 360 video player. So I did a lot of testing on that too, see how it looked. It's like a plugin that you can add to Premiere. So yeah, that's my piece, and I think be happy to take any questions if people have them. I would love to do more in this vein. It wasn't something that initially grabbed me as a mode of expression, but once you do a project like this, suddenly your brain starts thinking of like, oh, I could do another thing. What if I did X, Y, and Z? It starts getting you thinking of new ideas. So yeah, I do recommend just trying out these new techniques, and even if you don't know where they're going to end up, or even if you don't know exactly how to do them, just try to figure it out with the tools that you do know. Okay. Yeah. So, are there any other questions from anybody? Hopefully, it's inspiration to do your own thing. And again, I really like to um, try to come up with little stories or little films that you want to make for yourself. Um, especially if you have recurring characters that you like to draw and do things with. Um, just come up with short little exercises, um, like excuses to make a short film. And I think the holidays are always a really good one. Like a video that you could do. It can be like 30, 15 seconds or 30 seconds long. Just make a short video. Just this past Halloween, I made a Halloween animation. It's a GIF of the Bug Zapper, just because I wanted to post some new artwork, and then you use that as a reason to teach yourself a new program. So this one, I didn't really know the digital puppet tools in Toon Boom Harmony, so I said I'm gonna do this character as a cutout puppet. Um, so yeah, short little exercises I think are a great way to kind of get into that. Um, Short little videos. Try to not repeat yourself if possible. Try to do a new project and say, um, what new program can I learn use to do this? And that's a way that I've used to learn quite a few programs. I have a film in mind that I want to do, and then I say, all right, I need to use a new program to do it. And ideally, I don't always do that, but if you can teach yourself something new on the way, I think that's all the better.